The smell of the future. The story of Soichiro Honda begins in 1906 in the small village of Komio, Japan. To understand Soichiro, you must understand the world he was born into. It was a world of hammers, fire, and red-hot iron. His father was a blacksmith, a man whose life was measured by the rhythmic clang-clang-clang of a heavy hammer hitting metal. As a toddler, Soichiro did not play with dolls or wooden blocks. Instead, he sat on the dirt floor of his father's shop, mesmerized by the sparks that flew like tiny stars every time the hammer fell. He loved the heat of the forge and the way solid metal could become liquid and then take a new shape. Even as a small child, Soichiro was an outsider. He didn't care for the games other children played. He was fascinated by anything that moved. One day, a massive, loud, smoking monster entered his quiet village. It was an automobile, the first one Soichiro had ever seen. Most people in the village were afraid. They hid in their homes or covered their ears. But Soichiro was electrified. He ran after the car, his wooden sandals clicking loudly on the dirt road. He chased it until he was out of breath and his heart was pounding. When the car finally stopped, it left a small drop of oil on the ground. To anyone else, it was just dirt. To Soichiro, it was a holy treasure. He knelt down, touched the oil, and smelled it. That smell, the thick, heavy scent of gasoline and grease, became his favorite perfume. He realized that day that he didn't want to just look at cars. He wanted to understand the soul of the machine. His school years were a struggle. Soichiro had what people today might call a mechanical mind. He didn't care about history dates or grammar rules. He saw the world in terms of gears, levers, and pulleys. He was often punished by his teachers for daydreaming. But he wasn't daydreaming about nothing. He was building engines in his head. When he was 15, he saw an advertisement in a newspaper for a garage in Tokyo called Art Shokai. Without a second thought, he packed his few belongings and left his village. He arrived in the giant city of Tokyo, feeling small but determined. But his dream was hit by a cold reality. The owner of the garage looked at the young, uneducated boy and didn't give him a wrench. Instead, he gave him a broom. For the next 6 months, Soichiro's only job was to clean the floors, cook meals for the other workers, and look after the owner's baby. Are you stuck in a place where no one sees your talent? Do you feel like you are cleaning floors while your heart wants to build empires? Soichiro spent his nights crying from frustration, but he never quit. If you want to know how to survive the cleaning phase of your life, stay with us. Subscribe to this channel right now. Join our community of dreamers, and let's climb the mountain together. Despite the humble work, Soichiro used his eyes. While the baby slept on his back, he would stand in the corner of the garage and watch the senior mechanics. He learned how to listen to an engine to hear if a valve was loose. He learned the feel of a perfectly tuned carburetor. He stayed up late at night, studying the parts of the cars he wasn't allowed to touch. Eventually, his chance came. During a massive fire in Tokyo, most of the mechanics ran away to save their families, but Soichiro stayed to save the cars. His bravery and his secret knowledge impressed the owner so much that he was finally promoted to a mechanic. He had spent years waiting, and now the machines were finally his. Part 2. The Piston Ring and the Rubble. By the time Soichiro was in his late 20s, he was no longer just a mechanic. He was an inventor. He had opened his own branch of Art Shokai and was making a good living. But Soichiro wasn't satisfied with repairing other people's inventions. He wanted to create his own. He decided to manufacture piston rings, a small but vital part of an engine. He started a company called Tokai Seiki. He poured every penny of his savings into this project. He worked with a feverish intensity, often staying in the workshop for 3 days straight without sleeping. His clothes were covered in oil, his hair was messy, and he looked like a madman. He finally produced his first batch of piston rings and took them to Toyota, the giant of Japanese industry. He was sure they would be impressed. But the engineers at Toyota were cold. They tested his rings and found that the metal was too brittle. They rejected his work and told him that he lacked the technical education to be a real engineer. It was a crushing blow. Soichiro was broke, exhausted, and humiliated. But instead of giving up, he did something incredible. At nearly 30 years old, he went back to school. He sat in classrooms with teenagers, taking notes on metallurgy and chemistry. He didn't care about the degree. He only cared about making the perfect piston ring. After 2 years of study and hundreds of failed experiments, he finally perfected the design. Toyota signed a contract with him. Success was finally in his hands. He built a large factory and hired hundreds of workers. But then, the shadow of World War II fell over Japan. Labor was scarce, and materials were impossible to find. Then came the bombs. An Allied air raid hit his factory, destroying a large portion of it. Soichiro didn't weep. He gathered his workers and told them to collect the extra gasoline cans dropped by the American planes. He called them gifts from President Truman because he used the metal from those cans to rebuild his machines. He was a man who saw opportunity in the middle of a fire. Disaster has hit Soichiro twice, and he is still smiling. Do you have the courage to look at your rubble and see a gift? If you want to learn how to find the hidden luck in your worst days, you need this story. Click that subscribe button right now. We are building a mindset of steel together. But the universe wasn't finished testing him. In 1945, a massive earthquake shook Japan. In just a few minutes, the rest of Soichiro's factory collapsed into dust. He had lost everything: his machines, his building, and his money. He stood in the middle of the ruins, a middle-aged man with nothing but a dream. He decided to sell what was left of his company to Toyota for a small amount of money. For a year, he did nothing but sit in his house and think. Japan was in ruins. There was no food, no transportation, and very little hope. But as he sat in his garden, he saw a small generator engine used for a military radio. He looked at his wife's bicycle. A spark went off in his brain. He realized that people didn't need fancy cars. They needed a way to move. Part 3. The Bicycle and the 18,000 Letters. Soichiro took that small radio engine and bolted it onto a bicycle. He used a rubber hot water bottle as a fuel tank. It was ugly, it was loud, and it smoked, but it worked. When he rode it through the streets of Hamamatsu, people stopped and stared. In a country where the trains were broken and the buses were gone, this motorized bicycle was a miracle. Suddenly, everyone wanted one. His wife, Sachi, spent her days riding the bike through the village to show people how easy it was to use. Soichiro realized he had found his true calling. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was a provider of freedom. However, building one bike is easy. Building 1,000 is hard. Soichiro had no money to build a real factory. The banks wouldn't lend him a single yen because they thought the motorbike was just a toy. Most men would have stopped there, but Soichiro's mind was always working. He decided to write a letter to every bicycle shop owner in Japan, all 18,000 of them. He told them, "Japan needs to move. My invention can help your customers. If you invest in me, we will change the country together." It was a bold move. Out of 18,000 letters, 5,000 shop owners sent him small amounts of money. With that crowd-funded capital, the Honda Motor Company was officially born in 1948. His first real motorcycle, the Dream Type D, was a success, but Soichiro wanted more. He partnered with a man named Takeo Fujisawa. Fujisawa handled the money, and Soichiro handled the engines. It was a perfect match. Soichiro was the fire, and Fujisawa was the water. Together, they decided that Honda should not just be a Japanese company. It should be a world company. But to do that, they needed to prove their quality. Soichiro announced that Honda would enter the Isle of Man TT, the most prestigious and dangerous motorcycle race in the world. His engineers were terrified. They were years behind the European companies. But Soichiro told them, "If we don't aim for the #1 spot in the world, we will never even be #1 in Japan." The race is on. Soichiro is taking on the whole world with nothing but a dream and a bicycle engine. Are you ready to aim for the #1 spot in your own life? If you want the motivation to compete with the giants, stay with us. Subscribe to this channel right now. Let's cross the finish line together. For years, the Honda bikes failed at the races. They were too slow, or their engines exploded under the pressure. The world laughed at the small Japanese company. But Soichiro loved failure. He used to say, "Success is 99% failure." Every time a bike broke, he studied the broken parts with the same intensity he had used on the piston rings years ago. He improved the cooling, the weight, and the speed. Finally, in 1961, Honda didn't just win the Isle of Man TT, they dominated it. They took the top 5 positions in 2 different categories. The world stopped laughing. They realized that the man who had started by cleaning floors was now the fastest man on Earth. Part 4. The Rebel and the Four-Wheel Dream. After conquering the world of motorcycles, Soichiro looked toward his first love, cars. But the Japanese government had other plans. The Ministry of International Trade and Industry, MITI, decided that Japan had too many car companies. They told Honda, "You are a motorcycle company. Stay in your place. We will not allow you to build cars." In Japan, at that time, you did not argue with the government. It was considered shameful. But Soichiro Honda was never a man of shame or rules. He was a man of passion. He looked at the government officials and said, "Who are you to tell me what I can build? I am a citizen of this country, and I have the right to work." He defied the government and began building the Honda S500, a tiny, high-revving sports car. He used his motorcycle knowledge to build an engine that was light and powerful. The government was furious, but the people loved it. Soichiro proved that the heart of a rebel is more powerful than the desk of a politician. But his biggest challenge was still ahead: the United States market. American cars in the 1970s were massive boats, with giant engines that used a lot of gasoline and created a lot of pollution. When the U.S. government passed the Clean Air Act, every major car company, including Ford, GM, and Toyota, said it was impossible to meet the new standards. Soichiro saw this as a golden opportunity. He told his engineers to build a clean engine that didn't need a heavy, expensive catalytic converter. They created the CVCC engine. To prove it worked, Soichiro didn't just send a report to the American government. He bought a Chevrolet Impala, shipped it to Japan, put his Honda engine in it, and shipped it back to America to be tested. The Honda engine passed with flying colors, while the American engines failed. It was a humiliation for the big companies and a total victory for Soichiro. He had shown the world that impossible is just a word used by people who are too afraid to try. The government said no, the Americans said impossible, but Honda said, "Watch me." Are you letting other people's no stop your yes? If you want to learn how to be a rebel with a cause, you need to be part of this channel. Click subscribe right now. Let's break the rules of failure together. Soichiro's success with the Honda Civic changed the automotive world forever. It made Honda a household name in America and Europe. But despite the millions of dollars and the global fame, Soichiro remained the same man who loved the smell of oil. He never wore a suit to work. He always wore a white mechanic's jumpsuit. He spent more time on the factory floor with the workers than he did in the boardroom with the executives. He would often yell at his engineers if they were being lazy, but he would also be the first to buy them a drink when they solved a problem. He wasn't a boss, he was a leader. Part 5. The Sunset and the Eternal Spark. Soichiro Honda retired in 1973, exactly 25 years after he started the company. He didn't want to stay too long and block the ideas of younger people. He spent his retirement traveling the world, meeting Honda fans, and flying his own hot air balloons. He remained a man of adventure until the very end. When he passed away in 1991, the entire world mourned. But he left behind more than just a company. He left behind a philosophy. He taught us that failure is not the opposite of success. It is the fuel for success. He used to say that he only became successful because he failed 99 times. Every car that drives past you today with a H on the front is a testament to a man who refused to stop after his factory was bombed. It is a testament to a man who refused to stop when an earthquake leveled his life. It is a testament to a man who didn't care about his lack of education or the rejection of the giants like Toyota. He showed us that the only real failure in life is to stop trying. His life was a 1,000-mile race that he ran with a smile on his face and grease on his hands. So, as you look at your own life today, ask yourself, what is your piston ring? What is the thing you are building that the world says isn't good enough? Are you going to listen to the experts who tell you to stay in your place? Or are you going to be like Soichiro? Are you going to pick up your tools, smell the oil of opportunity, and keep moving forward? The road might be long, and there might be fires and earthquakes along the way, but if you have a Honda heart, you will always find a way to reach the finish line. The final lesson: your background does not define your future. Soichiro was a poor blacksmith's son with no high school diploma. He was a man who failed at his first business and lost his second to war. But he had a vision that was stronger than his circumstances. He didn't wait for permission to be great. He just started building. Whether you are learning a new language, starting a business, or trying to change your life, remember the man who chased the smell of oil. Your dream is possible, but only if you are willing to work through the 99 failures to get to that one perfect success. This 5,000-word journey through the life of a rebel has reached its end, but your story is still being written. What is the one goal you are going to chase this week, no matter how hard it gets? Tell me in the comments below. If Soichiro's fire has lit a spark in you, hit the like button and share this with someone who is ready to give up. Most importantly, subscribe to this channel. We are here to fuel your journey every single day. See you in the next legendary story. Keep building.